to join us. 1 second here. There we go. Hope everyone's having a great and healthy morning this morning. Delegate, turn your sound down on one of your.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to do that.
You're fine.
Hold on. How do I turn off the sound? All the way down.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. We are going to have a special guest in just 1 second. So give us a second and we will get started here. So,
well, I'm on, but I'm not entirely.
It's fine. We're good.
Okay.
There we go. So, good morning, everybody. Today, I am honored to have a very special guest with us today. We have Delegate Brooke Lierman from the 46th District. We know who is one of our phenomenal leaders in Annapolis, joining us to talk about COVID-19 and about the efforts that she's undertaken to make sure that the 46th District and all of Baltimore and all of Maryland are making it through this. So thank you, Delegate, for joining us. We're going to get to you with some questions for you and allow you to talk also about the great work that you're doing in just 1 second. But first, wanted to start off, as always, with giving everyone the latest update. We are up to currently have 9,472 cases in the state of Maryland, with 962 here for the city of Baltimore and 29 deaths. So again, everyone, please make sure that we are taking COVID-19 very seriously. And we have to understand that this is a health emergency like none other that we have seen in our lifetime. So we have to take it very seriously. And this is also why we're allowing different guests to come on to these lives to talk about all the great work that's being done by elected officials, citizen groups, union groups, people across the state of Maryland, across Baltimore City during this crisis. So let's get to our wonderful guest, Delegate Brooke Lierman. First, for those who may not know you, just give your introduction of yourself to the people.
Sure. Good morning. Great to be on here with you. Thanks for having me. Again, Brooke Lierman, and I am a state delegate representing the 46th District in Baltimore City. The 46th District is every neighborhood around the water. So we have all of Southeast and South Baltimore, and I'm honored to serve it with Senator Bill Ferguson and my fellow delegates Luke Lippinger and Robin Lewis. I live in Fells Point with my family, 2 kids, one of who's a first grader, and we're trying out all the distance learning through online Baltimore City Public Schools. And I've been doing a lot of work being really hyper local in my neighborhoods since I got back from the session, which ended early in Annapolis this year. But thanks so much for having me on today, and thanks for all the work you're doing.
Thank you, Delegate, and thank you, as always, thank you for the great work that you do in the session and then here back at home. I first met Delegate Lierman, everyone, when she was doing great work with neighborhoods in the 46th District around liquor stores and that great work. So thank you for always being a champion of the right thing to do in Baltimore City. So Delegate, talk about the 46th District. How are things in the 46th District? What are you hearing from your constituents?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think, we are really blessed to be an incredibly diverse district in many different ways, certainly in a number of different demographics and also in commercial and residential real estate. So we have a very large Latino population in our district, as well, of course, of an African-American white populations. But so I've been doing a lot of work in all of the neighborhoods around the district. Down in Brooklyn and Grace Bay, I was on a phone call today with about 20 organizations that are organizing, the schools, the library, the Greater Baybrook Alliance, churches, making sure that we're plugging away at food access, working with what the city has, but also doing some grassroots work and delivery, working in the Latino communities a lot. They, of course, many of them are undocumented, and so they are not eligible for unemployment. They're not eligible for the $1,200 coming from the federal government. Many are small business owners and their businesses aren't eligible for relief. So trying really to muster resources around those communities as well. And then really we have so many amazing small businesses in the 46th district. You think about, shopping in Federal Hill or Fells Point or Highlandtown, or art galleries and restaurants and retails, as well as a large number of institutions. So the American Visionary Arts Museum, Port Discovery, the BMI,
Yep.
the Science Center, the aquarium, right? And so all of these places are really hurting and also trying to figure out what resources are available to them. So I have, done everything I can to be a resource to those groups and keep open lines of communication so that we can keep talking about, oh, you need this, let me try and figure out if I can find the right person for you to talk to get to move that forward. Just this morning, I heard from 2 small businesses in my neighborhood with questions on why they haven't heard back from their state grant yet. And I shot over an email to Secretary Kelly Schultz saying, what's going on? And we got some information back. So about how inundated and overwhelmed they are at the Commerce Department. So trying to keep in touch with all of our employers, small businesses, and residents on the ground just to see where the holes are and plug away where we can, as well as, of course, our schools. So lots going on.
Yeah, talk about, and I know you've done that great work on food organizing. But talk about, I think this is an issue that during COVID-19, Delegate, that you and I know that sometimes we have to elevate because it's something that the average person doesn't think about. Talk about how important that is, especially for the area like that you represent, where you have a lot of not just immigrant families, a lot of refugee families. Talk about how important it is to do that, and they can also do it in a culturally sensitive way, even down to the kind of food that we're providing.
Right. I mean, that's a great point. And food access is really top of mind for me. When I think about the number of kids who rely on school and, school breakfast and lunches, and the school system is seeing more kids every day come, which indicates
Yes,
the level of desperation among families is really growing. It's not being abated right now. And I think it's important to have the city efforts and the city schools efforts, but there's another layer that has to be supported and that I'm trying to work with and support through our foundation community and city and schools, which is the grassroots level. Maybe a family doesn't feel comfortable going to a rec center or a school. Maybe they don't have kids, right? It's an adult who
right.
children. They don't think they can go to a school to get food. They don't know what a rec center is, but they go to church every Sunday. So how can we make sure that their church or the leaders that they are connected to have access to food or know how to get them access to food? Maybe a family, is happy to get a bag of rice. One family is, but another family, they don't know how to cook a bag of rice. And so giving
Right.
them is not
Exactly.
helpful, right? And so I think we have to be really cognizant and meet people where they are, right? This isn't the time to force people to take a long journey across town, on a bus.
It's hard. It's a lot harder to do right now.
It's a lot harder to do right now, and we don't want them to do it, right?
Right.
And there's also this question of, for undocumented immigrants, they're very worried about being out and about and having the police pick them up. Even though we know that our Baltimore Police Department is really good, doesn't, is very cognizant of where our undocumenteds are and working with them. There's still fear out there about getting a misdemeanor for being
Right.
outside and breaking the directive and having that make it so that you can't ever become a citizen. So I think there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of concern, and we have to work through a number of different channels to make sure that people have access to food and the things that they need. So I've been trying to push that approach a lot in my neighborhoods. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for the
Thank
Delegate.
you
And I
for all
think
the work you're doing. Yep.
it's a very important when you talk about that in the food insecurity in different places, in different neighborhoods. As you and I know, different blocks in Baltimore could mean a
Yeah.
different thing. We have to adapt at every turn and in everything that we do. And we know that, Delegate, one of the areas most hit hard by this is our businesses and our small businesses in particular. And also, I just want to let everyone know, of course, as always on these briefings, please send your questions in now. We will be sure to answer them in just a few short seconds. But any question you have for the Delegate and I, please send them now, and we will get to you. But also, we know that our small businesses have been hit extremely hard. I know you've done some great work on trying to advocate and push people to the right resources. I've done some work as well. But talk about the advocacy you've done around small businesses and some of the resources that are available at the state level, and what advice you have to give to business owners who may be struggling during this time.
Sure. I mean, I think first advice is to leave no stone unturned, right? To apply for everything, even if you don't know whether you qualify or not, because rules are rapidly changing. For instance, with the Paycheck Protection Program at the federal level, those regulations haven't even been written yet. They're supposed to be published tomorrow. And so there's still, I think, a high level of uncertainty that about about all the details for it. Of course, the state has closed its emergency loan fund because it ran out of money. And people are still waiting to hear about what they applied for. And I do have an update on that, and I just wanted to share it. This comes directly from Commerce Secretary. So a lot of people are really worried about why it's taking so long for their loan to get reviewed. And so here, direct from the Secretary of Commerce is, why is it getting so long? The word is that within the first few hours of the application being announced on March 23rd, they had thousands of applications. And within 48 hours, they realized that the Commerce Department IT couldn't handle the workload. And so they had to obtain a vendor to create a new one-stop shop system. So they have been doing that. And that one-stop shop system is up and running, but the Department of Commerce has barely over 200 employees. And so they're trying to put internal controls in place so that there's checks and balances and making sure that people are getting the right amount of money, because they don't want to send too much to somebody and then not have enough for somebody else. Unfortunately, there's no way that we can provide a date that people will get their checks. And that's what the Department of Commerce has told us repeatedly. We can't give you a date. We can't give you a date. There are 40,000 applications that they're going through right now. And she's trying to conduct a number of information sessions. In fact, I'm having her on Friday. But basically, they're just working through in a chronological order all the applications they received. And they're also bringing in state employee volunteers as well. So, what's next is they've created a tourism recovery task force. And they're starting to look at how can we reopen, what will that look like, making sure that everybody's represented as well. They're also going to be looking at a manufacturing recovery task force and creating guidelines for when we eventually are able to reopen. So that's some updates from the Secretary of Commerce.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Delegate. And I think the last question I have for you before we turn to questions is actually the most important. How are you doing, and how's your family doing this time period?
Thank you. I feel really blessed to be working on behalf of my constituents. I feel really blessed to have, my husband still has his job. We're very lucky. We're both working from home. We took over our children's playroom, and we are doing what other parents are doing, sort of doing kids work, working with our kids to do, we have one first grader, so doing the online learning, but, mostly I'm concerned about people. I'm concerned about Baltimore. I'm concerned about our state. We have a huge state deficit now, and a huge Baltimore deficit. And I love our city and I love the people I represent. And I want to be able to be as present and helpful to everybody in the city and the 46th district as I can be. So I'm moving very quickly and trying to respond to emails as fast as possible. I have a great legislative director, Danny DePietro, who's helping as well. But we're hanging in there and trying to do our best for everybody. I feel really, really blessed and thankful for all the work that's being done out there.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Delegate. We're going to turn to some questions here. And actually, I will give the first one to you. I have a question in that says, what do you do if you've been denied unemployment because you're just learning that your job did not report you as an employee and is possibly committing tax fraud?
That's a great question. I would say email details to your state delegates and or your council person so that we can report it to the comptroller's office. And then We will work with you on an individual basis to see if we can, if you can't get unemployment, if it's possible for you to get the extra $600 at least that is coming out starting next week that would be attached to unemployment checks. So if it's through no fault of your own, we can certainly try to work with you in the Department of Labor to see what we can do for you. But I would reach out to make sure we can report the business and to see if there's, what we can do for you in the interim.
Yeah, be sure to send us a direct message. My staff will be sure to connect you to the direct representative that represents you, and we can help to follow up as well.
Yeah.
The next one, I know you'll want to comment on too, but I'll take this one. It says, "What are you doing about the officer that coughed on the citizen? Why is he still being paid?" So we know that we had an unacceptable behavior.
Totally unacceptable.
Was the person that sent that to the police commissioner for investigation. We did learn yesterday that he's been reassigned. You have to understand that in the state of Maryland, I know Delegate can talk about this. There's a process that we have to go through. The police commissioner, unlike in other states, can't just fire the person, right? That person has to go through an investigation. There has to be a board that recommends punishment, and we're going to make sure that everyone knows about that. Those meetings are actually, it's a good point, some homework for me. Those meetings are now available to the public. So I have to go back and make sure that when they're having trial board meetings that they're putting them on WebEx as well. But you can rest and assure that I am going to continue to communicate with the police commissioner about making sure that that officer faces the strictest penalty allowable by law, because we cannot anytime have any public servant violating people's respect in that manner and being very insensitive in that manner, especially during a crisis like COVID-19. So I know that I'll be consistently following up with the police department and the commissioner directly about that. And Delegate, I wanted to see if you wanted to chime in on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I was horrified when I saw that. I mean, it was it was in my district. I was at Perkins. I immediately reached out to the principal there, who's at City Springs, who's in communication with, a lot of the families who complained to her about it because they had seen it. I mean, it was appalling. Like, sometimes you're just, what is wrong with people, right? Like, why? I mean, it was awful. And so, yeah, I immediately emailed the police department, as did my team. We were we were horrified to watch that. It was so obnoxious and so awful and just, yeah, totally unacceptable. So we will also be following up with the commissioner because it's exactly the opposite of what we should expect from our police department. So yeah, really bad.
So the next question was how can we make sure that Black-owned businesses are being processed fairly for the SBA loans? Is the city tracking businesses to apply to them to see approval and denial rate? So we know that BDC is doing a lot of tracking, and that's great work. I can also attest that I actually brought this very issue directly up to both of our great senators, Senator Van Hollen and Senator Cardin, about this, and telling them that, listen, they're going to have to make sure that this is being done through a lens of equity. And then also, as they go through more rounds of recovery, that they have to be sensitive, even including direct funds to these kinds of businesses, because we know, unfortunately, the practices that banks have, we know that, and we're going to continue to push on that. And that's also why I push for the city to have its own. And we know that $10 million loan fund, and actually we think that the mayor's announcing that right now. So we know that we're going to continue to push that. And it's always, whenever I have anything to do with it, we're going to push things through a lens of equity, because neighborhoods where these businesses are going to be the most impacted. They're also, we know that our small Black businesses hire people from Baltimore, our small Latino businesses, our women's businesses in Baltimore hire people from the community. So we have to support them as well. Delegate, you wanted to chime in on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. And I'd actually reached out, and they'd reached out to me, and we've been talking with the Maryland Philanthropy Network and others about this issue, because there's a real concern. I mean, at first, banks weren't even taking customers who didn't have loans, which of course, it's been very difficult in Baltimore City to get a loan. Capital has not been flowing well for a number of years. And so a number of businesses, just by virtue of the fact that they don't happen to have a loan with a bank at the time, could have been cut out from the Paycheck Protection Program. And since there's a limited number of funds, they were instantly put at a disadvantage. So fortunately, a few people, including Senator Van Hollen and others, had talked, and I talked with SBA, quickly they talked to Bank of America and some other banks, and that went away. That requirement went away. But no, it's a huge problem. And I think this is something that we have to keep a very close eye on, because we know that traditionally banks have not been equitable in how they've made loans and how they've worked with people. And the SBA is not capitalized. So the SBA itself can't do this program. It's working through the banks. And that is, I mean, it's not an ideal situation, but it's where we are. And so what we have to do is play a really strong oversight role and make sure that we are following where the money's going, who's getting loans, who's not, and require reporting. So, both Black-owned businesses, as well as women-owned businesses, as well as Latino-owned businesses, making sure that money is flowing to a lot of these underserved and often underrepresented in the banking industry type businesses. So thanks for your work on that. I'm really glad the city and that the mayor are going to be putting out this loan.
Thank you. And thank you. Listen, we're all in this together. No one's going to have all the best ideas. We have to consistently work and communicate. So I always appreciate all the great work that everyone does in the House of Delegates. And the 46th district has a superb team.
I think so. We're good. The Fighting 46 are good.
Yes, Fighting 46, exactly. The next one is solely for me. It's a mandatory mask resolution that we asked the mayor to implement last night. So will there be access, or will people be required to wear them just indoors, or will they need to wear them when walking or running for exercise? So I guess first and foremost, we now know that the mayor is considering implementing this. This is why we as a body wanted to lift this up, right? Because we could have, the truth is that we could have put in the ordinance to do this, but it takes so long for us to get through that. It's better an emergency point to go from an executive order. So a few things. One, it depends on how he rolls it out. If you look at the counties and other places, they're requiring people when they're doing essential things that are necessary. If you're at the store, then you have to have on a mask. We also want people when they're on city property and working and around other people to also wear a mask as well. And then the most important portion, I think, that is getting lost is that we know we have great businesses in Baltimore like Giant, Safeway, and others who have put in these social distancing measures to limit the amount of people in the store, to protect the workers, to protect other consumers. But we know that there are many neighborhoods in Baltimore. I was over the weekend driving around West and East Baltimore and saw some of like the smaller corner stores where people were getting food, where it's very hard to social distance in their period. And we need those businesses putting in the same kind of regulations, because we know, for example, in 21215, where all of my family lives except me, we know that a lot of people get their access to food and essential things from these smaller places. And we have to put everything in case that we do. And the second portion is that, yes, I think that also remember, it's not just a mask, it's any facial covering. So if you cover your face with a t-shirt or a scarf or anything you have, and we absolutely going to have to also look at figuring out how we can try to provide some wearing all possible. Another question, someone says, how would I obtain information regarding a tax refund intercepted by the comptroller's office? There's no one manning the phone lines at this time due to COVID-19, and I am unable to get answers to this question.
So I would reach out to it's a great question, for anything related to the comptroller's office. If they're not answering, I would get in touch with your state delegates or state senator or me. Just email me, and I'm happy to raise it to the comptroller's office and see what we can do. Sometimes it just takes somebody to bring it to their attention to get some resolution. So definitely delegate, senator, or me, and I'm happy to take care of it.
Thank you. Yeah, and you give to us, we'll connect you to the right person. It might be Delegate Lierman. If it is, you'll be very pleased with the result, because you'll get a quick answer that way for sure. Next one, Delegate, was this is an easy one. Are there any other funds for positive tested patients? So someone, of course, we know the information that's coming from the feds and the checks that are coming out. I don't think there's any extra funds for people who have tested positive. But be also, if you know someone, or if this is you personally, send us a direct message. Let us know what your needs are so that we can try to connect you to any service as possible. Or if it's someone that you know, let us know so that we can try to connect people to services. This is something critical, and we have to be willing to ask questions, especially on behalf of ourselves and people that are more vulnerable. So if you know somebody, please let us know, or if that's you. Next thing, Delegate, I wanted to talk to you about this as well. I know for me, with my family and even my neighborhood, like this has been a tough time for everyone. I know that, for example, I talked about this on here like a month ago, where my mom and my dad were mad at me because I forbid them from going to visit my grandma, right, who has a pre.
Yeah, I know. My dad is
Uh,
very unhappy. I won't see him. Yeah, yeah,
oh yeah, I can imagine your dad being
yeah,
unhappy too. Exactly.
yeah.
I know the delegate's dad. I could see him being a little angry with the
He's very
delegate.
social, so he's unhappy that we won't, we don't let him hang out with his grandkids right now.
Yeah. And then also, like, for example, like I had a birthday last week, and then Easter was Sunday, and I was upset. We normally
Yeah.
will get together at my grandmother's house. Talk about like what kind of things you're putting in place with even your family, like your dad and others, and what's your advice that you're giving to your neighborhood and your constituents
Yeah.
about practicing social distancing and staying healthy.
Yeah, it's a good question. As a mom of a first grader, he's misses his friends. And certainly my mother actually is in an assisted living facility in Montgomery County. And so we have there's no way we can see her, and none of the kids can see her. And she's a hard time on social media sometimes too. So, but I have tried to set up with friends WhatsApp chats. So we have like a group of neighbors where we communicate now. We've never done that before. We do weekly Zoom dinner dates with my siblings and my dad. So every Thursday at 6 p.m., no matter what we're doing, we take 45 minutes and we set up the computer on the table, and everybody has it. And we have a very chaotic dinner experience with kids, like 6 grandkids and siblings and everything talking. Usually it ends up talking about usually we end up talking about politics, and the grandkids, my kids, all say, we don't want to talk about politics,
Right.
we want to talk Legos and whatnot. But and then my kids, my son has recently discovered Facebook Messenger for kids, and
Oh
he's been
wow.
friends over that, which is a whole nother world. And it's cute though, they can play with one another. And
That's
then we've
awesome.
also around the neighborhood some little scavenger hunts. So people will put like a little animal cutouts or something in their windows, and you have to go around and check off how many you find, just as a way of getting kids outside. They're not together, but they're doing something that's similar together. We also did a big neighborhood card writing. So we wrote cards for first responders and not doctors and nurses that I'm delivering to the University of Maryland and Hopkins. So trying to get activities that they can do together or they can do separately, but know that they're all doing it. And I think that that's been helpful too. But it's tough, and it's also just being honest with your kids and with each other and explaining, what's going on. And personally, I go for a walk every morning to keep my sanity. I walk to Patterson Park Pagoda, look at how pretty the park is, and I walk home, and then I'm ready
Right.
for the day.
Yeah, for me, I think that I was a little ahead of the curve. So I've been communicating via WhatsApp video, and this actually really happened,
Oh, that's
I
cool.
guess, for like a few years. Like my brother
Mhm.
was gone. One of my brothers was in Tennessee. The other one was in the Navy on a boat. So we would only be able to communicate that way. And we got my mom
Yeah,
into it too. And
yeah.
then now, that's how we call each other.
Now
So
everyone does it.
yeah,
Yeah,
that part was easy for us. That portion, being able to communicate with them, and now my grandma does it, so that makes it even easier. So I'm able to
yeah,
communicate with her, and my friends and I. We always are using stuff like that. And
yeah.
Saturday night there was a big hip hop '90s hip hop battle on Instagram, and then on Sunday, me and some of my friends had a Zoom to just argue with each other about that, which was
About
pretty.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it was pretty
Nice.
cool. I also want to
That's-
remind everyone that you can find your rep, your state rep at the website. We're going to put it both of the websites in the website into the chat right now, so you can find your representative there for the state, all your senator, all your delegates, and also you can always find your direct council rep in addition to me as council president at BaltimoreCityCouncil.com. So thank you, delegate.
yeah.
Do you have anything else that you would like to
Yeah,
add?
I want to say, thank you to you for your work, Council President Scott. Thank you to the city and everybody who works for the city. Thanks to everybody for logging on and being involved in it. And, I have a lot of gratitude in my heart for the amazing things that I see happening every day, whether it's our cafeteria school workers, giving out food at school, our nurses, our doctors, our grocery store clerks, our transit drivers. So grateful for the work that's happening. And I know that, I know that this is a time that we can shine, that we can pull together for one another. And it's great to see a lot of that happening, and look forward to continuing to work with you, Council President Scott, and your team and moving Baltimore forward and getting through this. So take care, everybody. Be kind.
Thank you to our special guest, the Delegate Brooke Lierman. Thank you, Delegate, for always doing a great work on behalf of the 46th District and all of Baltimore. I know that we will keep it up and even do a lot more and better. We know that's going to happen in the future. As I always say to everyone at the the most important thing that we can do right now is stay safe, practice social distancing, make sure you're communicating, checking on your loved ones, but always, always, always take COVID very, very seriously, everyone. And we will see you tomorrow on our live update. So thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you. Take care.